A billionaire thinks he's untouchable as he jets off to Milan Fashion Week with his Instagram mistress, leaving his pregnant wife behind like a forgotten accessory. Big mistake. What he doesn't know is that his helpless wife just spent her morning liquidating hidden assets worth $25 million. She's not crying, she's calculating. While he's posting couple photos in Milan, she's about to detonate a financial bomb that will obliterate his empire and crown her queen of the fashion world. This is the story of how one underestimated woman turned her husband's cruelest betrayal into his most devastating nightmare. Get ready for the revenge that broke the internet. The ultrasound gel was cold against Madison Reynolds' belly, but nothing could chill the warmth spreading through her chest as she heard her baby's heartbeat for the first time. The technician smiled, adjusting the wand to get a clearer picture of the tiny life growing inside her. "Everything looks perfect, Mrs. Reynolds. Your baby is developing beautifully at 20 weeks. Madison squeezed her eyes shut, memorizing the rhythmic whoosh-whoosh sound. When she opened them, she was alone. Tyler should have been here, holding her hand, sharing this moment. Instead, he was across town closing another deal, building another fortune, living another day where she barely registered as a footnote in his success story. Her phone buzzed. A text from Tyler. "Sorry, babe. Meeting ran long. Everything good with the baby, love you." She stared at the message, then at the ultrasound photo in her other hand. The same Tyler who could negotiate billion-dollar mergers in 3 languages couldn't spare 2 hours for his unborn child's first photo. Madison slipped the ultrasound picture into her designer purse, a birthday gift from Tyler that cost more than most people's cars. The irony wasn't lost on her. She owned jewelry worth millions, but couldn't buy her husband's attention. The elevator in their Manhattan penthouse building was mirrored on 3 sides. As it climbed to the 42nd floor, Madison caught her reflection and barely recognized herself. Stanford MBA, former rising star at Goldman Sachs, now reduced to what Tyler's business magazines called the perfect billionaire's wife. Perfect. The word made her stomach turn. Their penthouse overlooked Central Park, a view that real estate agents claimed was worth $30 million. Madison walked through rooms that looked like magazine spreads, all cream marble and designer furniture that no one was allowed to actually use. She'd traded her corner office for a golden cage. In Tyler's study, his assistant had left a stack of papers requiring his signature. Madison's eyes caught on an invoice from Cartier, a diamond bracelet worth $85,000. Purchased yesterday, the same day as her ultrasound appointment. The bracelet wasn't for her. Madison's hands trembled as she scrolled through Tyler's credit card statements on his unlocked laptop. Designer lingerie from Agent Provocateur, hotel suites at the Plaza, dinner for 2 at restaurants. Tyler claimed he was too busy to take her to. Then she saw it 2 first-class tickets to Milan. Departure date tomorrow. 1 ticket bore Tyler's name. The other belonged to someone called Savannah Brooks. Madison Googled the name with hands that no longer trembled but moved with surgical precision. Savannah Brooks appeared across her screen in an explosion of bronzed skin and barely there bikinis. 2.3 million Instagram followers. OnlyFans creator. Self-proclaimed lifestyle influencer. And according to the most recent posts, she was so excited for my mystery man to take me somewhere special. Madison closed the laptop and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows. 42 floors below. People moved through their lives like ants, each carrying their own struggles and dreams. She pressed her palm against her belly, feeling the slight swell where their daughter was growing. "Your daddy thinks mommy is stupid," she whispered to her unborn child. But mommy used to run $60 million portfolios before she gave it all up to be perfect. Her reflection stared back from the window blonde hair perfectly styled, designer clothes perfectly fitted, life perfectly destroyed. But in her eyes, something was awakening. Something Tyler had forgotten existed. Something dangerous. Madison waited until Tyler left for his emergency board meeting, which she now knew was actually a goodbye dinner with Savannah, before she began her real work. The penthouse that had felt like a prison now became her command center. She started with Tyler's laptop, but Tyler Morrison hadn't built a tech empire by being careless with passwords. Fortunately, Madison Reynolds hadn't graduated summa cum laude from Stanford by giving up easily. Tyler's password patterns had always been predictable: Data Vault plus a meaningful date. She tried Data Vault 2019, the year he founded the company. Wrong. Data Vault 2021, when they got married. Wrong. Then, with growing dread, she tried Data Vault 2024 this year, the year he met Savannah. The laptop unlocked. Madison's financial training kicked in as she navigated through Tyler's files. What she found was worse than simple infidelity. Tyler hadn't just been cheating on her, he'd been systematically erasing her from their shared life. Their joint investment accounts had been quietly transferred to individual accounts in Tyler's name only. The penthouse deed, originally in both their names, had been changed to his sole ownership 6 months ago. Even her beloved jewelry collection had been moved to a safety deposit box she couldn't access. But the cruelest discovery was a series of emails between Tyler and his lawyer about protecting assets in case of divorce proceedings and establishing grounds for sole custody based on emotional instability. Madison's blood turned to ice. Tyler wasn't just planning to leave her, he was planning to take their daughter. A text notification popped up on Tyler's phone, which he'd carelessly left charging on his desk. It was from Savannah. Can't wait for Milan, baby. I bought the perfect dress to meet your fashion contacts. This is going to change everything for my brand fashion contacts in Milan. Madison scrolled through Tyler's calendar and found it meetings with executives from Lux Media Group, one of the world's largest luxury fashion conglomerates. Tyler was using his business connections to launch Savannah's influencer career, the same connections he'd refused to make when Madison had asked him to introduce her to potential investors for women-founded startups. Madison felt something crack inside her chest. Not her heart that had been breaking slowly for months. This was different. This was the sound of her last illusion shattering. She photographed everything: the financial transfers, the legal emails, the travel itineraries, the receipts for gifts bought with money from accounts she'd helped build. Then she copied all of Tyler's business files onto an encrypted drive, including detailed information about Data Vault's clients and upcoming mergers. As she worked, Madison caught her reflection in Tyler's computer screen. The woman staring back no longer looked broken. She looked focused, calculating, ready. The baby kicked, and Madison smiled for the first time in weeks. "Don't worry, little one," she murmured, her hand protective over her belly. "Mommy's going to make sure Daddy learns that some games have consequences he never saw coming." But first, she had a phone call to make. Madison pulled out her personal cell phone and dialed a number she hadn't called in 2 years. Jake Chen's office. "Jake, it's Madison Reynolds. I need to ask you about that underground fashion investment syndicate you mentioned at Sarah's wedding. Are you still involved?" A pause. "Madison, holy shit. I thought you disappeared into billionaire wife land forever." "Yeah, I'm still doing alternative fashion investments." "Why?" "Because I'm about to become a very motivated investor with some very specific targets. Are you free for dinner tonight?" "For you always. But Madison, are you okay? You sound different." Madison looked around the penthouse that had been her prison, then at the ultrasound photo of her daughter taped to Tyler's monitor. "I'm better than okay. Jake, I'm awake." Jake Chen had barely changed since their Goldman Sachs days, still sharp-suited, still carrying himself like a man who could smell profit from 3 blocks away. but his eyes widened when he saw Madison walk into the exclusive Soho restaurant. Jesus, Madison, you look like you've seen a ghost. I have, Madison said, sliding into the booth across from him. My own. She'd chosen her outfit carefully understated designer dress, minimal jewelry, hair pulled back in a style that said, serious businesswoman, not decorative wife. The transformation felt like putting on armor. Tell me about the underground fashion investments, Madison said without preamble. Jake leaned back, studying her. Straight to business. I missed this version of you. He signaled the waiter for wine, then focused entirely on Madison. It's high risk, high reward. We find designers who are brilliant but undercapitalized, bypass traditional fashion houses and their corporate bullshit. Some of our investments have returned 3,000%. What kind of money are we talking about? Entry-level 2 to 5 million per designer. But Madison, this isn't like traditional investing. Fashion is emotional, unpredictable. It's art meeting commerce. And sometimes art doesn't give a damn about profit margins. Madison pulled out her phone and showed Jake a photo of Savannah Brooks at a fashion event, draped all over Tyler. What if I told you I wanted to target specific brands specifically? Brands that cater to Instagram influencers. Jake's eyebrows shot up. That's oddly specific, and potentially brilliant. The influencer fashion market is oversaturated with cheap knockoffs. A luxury brand that could capture that aesthetic, but with real quality. That could be massive. I need names. Designers who are talented but struggling. People who would be grateful for a silent partner with serious money. Madison, what the hell is going on? 2 years ago, you were telling me about charity galas and art auctions. Now you're talking like you want a hostile takeover the fashion industry. Madison met his eyes steadily. Let's just say I'm diversifying my interests. Jake pulled out his tablet and scrolled through a list of contacts. There's this guy, Marcus Klein, German transplant, incredible eye for design, but he's about to lose his atelier because he can't scale production. He specializes in luxury coats and evening wear, very high-end stuff. How much does he need? 3 million would save his business. 5 million would let him expand into ready-to-wear. Set up a meeting. Madison, slow down. These aren't stock portfolios. You can't just throw money around and expect... Jake? Madison's voice cut through his objections like a blade. I have access to significant capital. I understand risk assessment better than most people in this city. And I have very specific motivations for wanting to succeed in this industry. Can you help me or not? Jake stared at her for a long moment, then grinned. There she is, the woman who used to terrify junior analysts and charm clients into 7-figure deals. I thought Tyler had lobotomized you. Tyler made the mistake of thinking I was decoration. That's going to cost him more than he ever imagined. Over the next 2 hours, Jake outlined the underground fashion investment network. It was like discovering a parallel financial universe where creativity mattered as much as profit margins, where a single viral moment could transform a struggling artist into a global brand. There's one more thing, Jake said as they prepared to leave. The investors in this network, we protect each other. Fashion can be vicious. And there are people who would love to destroy what we're building. If you're in, your family. But if you're just here to play rich housewife games... I'm not playing anything, Madison said. I'm building something that will outlast whatever Tyler thinks he's accomplished. Jake nodded slowly. Then, welcome back to the real world. Madison Reynolds. It's going to be a hell of a ride. As Madison walked back toward her penthouse, she felt her phone buzz with a text from Tyler. Flight delayed, won't be home tonight. Don't wait up. She didn't bother responding. Instead, she called her banker and requested access to her trust fund. The one Tyler didn't know existed. The one her grandfather had established with very specific instructions that only Madison could access, and only for business investments. $25 million. More than enough to play Tyler's game better than Tyler himself. Madison's meeting with Marcus Klein was scheduled for 10 a.m. at his struggling garment district atelier. She arrived to find a space that looked like organized chaos, half-finished garments hanging from every surface, fabric bolts stacked to the ceiling, and a man with wild gray hair bent over a sewing machine, muttering in German. Mr. Klein. He looked up, and Madison saw genius burning in his eyes. Frustrated. Desperate genius. You are the investor Jake spoke of. His accent was thick, but his English precise. Forgive me. I expected someone different. Different how? Male. Older. With more obvious scars from battle. Madison smiled grimly. My scars aren't visible, but they're there. For the next hour, Marcus showed her his work. Each piece was architectural, sculptural, wearable art that happened to be extraordinarily beautiful. His coats especially were masterpieces, structured yet flowing, powerful yet feminine. The fashion houses, they want me to simplify, to mass produce, Marcus explained, holding up a coat that seemed to capture light in its folds. They want my name but not my vision. I refuse, so I starve. What if you didn't have to choose? Madison outlined her proposal, full funding for his atelier, complete creative control, but with one condition. She wanted to be more than a silent partner. She wanted to learn the business from the ground up. I bring capital and strategic thinking. You bring artistic vision. We build something that doesn't compromise either. Marcus studied her for a long moment. Why fashion? Why not invest in something you understand? Because fashion is the only industry where a single moment can change everything, where art becomes power, and power becomes influence. I need to understand how that works. They shook hands on a $5 million deal that would save Marcus's business and launch Madison's transformation into someone Tyler would never see coming. But as Madison walked home, floating on the success of her first real business deal in 2 years, her phone rang. Tyler's ringtone. Hey babe, how's my beautiful wife? Something in his tone made Madison's stomach clench. Too cheerful, too forced. I'm fine. How's Milan? Actually, that's why I'm calling. I have some news that might be hard to hear. Madison stopped walking. In the middle of Fifth Avenue, surrounded by the noise of New York, she felt the world go silent. The board called an emergency meeting about the European expansion. I have to stay here longer than planned. Maybe 2 weeks. 2 weeks. I know it's terrible timing with the baby and everything, but this deal could be worth hundreds of millions. You understand? Right. Madison understood perfectly. Tyler was extending his romantic vacation with Savannah and expecting his pregnant wife to smile and accept it. Of course I understand, she said, her voice steady. Business comes first. You're amazing, Madison. I'm so lucky to have a wife who gets it. I'll make it up to you when I get back. I promise. After Tyler hung up, Madison stood on the sidewalk as people flowed around her like water around a stone. 2 weeks. Tyler was giving himself 2 weeks to play house with his mistress while his pregnant wife handled everything alone. That night, Madison sat in their empty penthouse, eating takeout Chinese food and researching everything she could find about Savannah Brooks. The woman wasn't just Tyler's mistress. She was building a brand around being the perfect influencer girlfriend. Her Instagram was full of luxury travel photos, designer outfit posts, and carefully curated glimpses of her mysterious billionaire boyfriend. Madison found Savannah's business manager's contact information and spent an hour crafting the perfect email. She introduced herself as a talent scout for a luxury fashion brand interested in collaborating with high-end influencers. The response came within 30 minutes. Savannah was very interested and available for meetings. Madison stared at her laptop screen, feeling something cold and calculating settling in her chest. Tyler thought he was playing chess while she played house. He had no idea she was about to flip the entire board. 2 days later, Madison sat across from Savannah Brooks in a trendy cafe in the West Village, wearing dark sunglasses and a simple black dress that made her look like any other fashion industry professional. Savannah had come dressed for Instagram in head-to-toe designer pieces that probably cost more than most people's rent. "I'm so excited about this opportunity," Savannah gushed, not touching her $20 green juice. "My followers are so engaged, and they trust my recommendations completely." Madison smiled and pulled out a tablet. "Your engagement rates are impressive. 2.3 million followers with an 8% interaction rate. That's rare in today's market." "Right, and my boyfriend, he's like super connected in business. He's always telling me I should think bigger. You know, not just post about products, but actually build a real brand." "Smart boyfriend," Madison said, fighting to keep her voice neutral. "What kind of brand are you envisioning?" For the next hour, Savannah outlined her plans: a luxury lifestyle brand targeting young women who wanted to live their best lives. Clothing, accessories, maybe a reality show. It was vapid, but potentially profitable. And Madison found herself genuinely impressed by Savannah's business instincts, even if she despised everything else about her. "The thing is," Savannah continued, "I need someone who really understands the luxury market. Someone with connections to real designers, not just fast fashion knockoffs." Madison leaned forward. "What if I told you I might be able to introduce you to some very exclusive designers, people who work with A-list celebrities, royalty, that level of clientele?" Savannah's eyes widened. "Are you serious? That would be like life-changing?" "I'm very serious. But this kind of introduction requires discretion. The designers I work with value privacy above everything else." "Of course, absolutely. I can be super discreet." Madison pulled a contract from her briefcase. "This is a preliminary agreement. If you sign, I'll arrange meetings with 3 designers who could transform your brand. The only requirement is that you keep our arrangement completely confidential until I say otherwise." Savannah signed without reading the fine print. The same fine print that gave Madison significant control over any business partnerships Savannah entered through Madison's introductions. After Savannah left, Madison sat in the cafe feeling a dangerous surge of power. She'd just signed Tyler's Mistress to a contract that would allow Madison to control significant aspects of Savannah's business dealings. The irony was exquisite. But the real breakthrough came that evening when Madison met with Marcus Klein to review his first designs for their collaboration. He'd created a collection inspired by hidden power clothes that looked elegant and understated, but contained subtle elements that conveyed strength and intelligence. "These are perfect," Madison breathed, running her fingers over a coat that seemed simple until you noticed the architectural seaming that created a silhouette of absolute authority. "You have good instincts," Marcus said. "But I must ask, this is not just about fashion for you, is it?" Madison met his eyes. "No, it's about power. It's about showing the world that the woman they overlooked is the one they should have feared." Marcus nodded slowly. "Then we will give you armor, not just clothing. Armor that makes you invisible until you choose to reveal yourself." That night, Madison video called Tyler from their bedroom, wearing one of her new prototype pieces, a deceptively simple black dress that somehow made her look like she could run a Fortune 500 company. "You look beautiful," Tyler said, but she could see him glancing at something off camera. Probably Savannah. How's the business trip going? Great. Really productive. The European clients are interested in expanding our data analytics into fashion market research. It's a completely new sector for us. Madison's blood went cold. Tyler was already planning to enter the fashion industry using the connections he'd made through Savannah. He was going to try to monetize the same world Madison was building her power in. Fashion market research sounds fascinating, she said carefully. Yeah, there's huge money in predicting trend cycles and consumer behavior in luxury markets. I might extend the trip even longer to explore some partnerships. After they hung up, Madison stared at her reflection in their bedroom mirror. The woman looking back at her was no longer the broken wife Tyler had left behind, but she wasn't yet the force of nature she needed to become. She pulled out her phone and called Jake. I need to accelerate everything, she said without preamble. How quickly can we go from design to market with a luxury collection? Madison, what's wrong? You sound, how quickly? Jake. If you're willing to take risks and spend serious money, 6 weeks for a limited collection, but that's insane timeline pressure. Perfect. Do it. Madison, what the hell is going on? Madison looked at the ultrasound photo she kept on her nightstand, then at the empty space where Tyler should have been. War, she said simply. War is going on. Madison should have seen Victoria Sterling coming. The woman appeared in Madison's life like an answer to prayers she hadn't realized she was making. Elegant, sophisticated, with silver hair and sharp intelligence that radiated from every gesture. She introduced herself at a charity luncheon Madison attended to maintain appearances. You're Tyler Morrison's wife, Victoria said, extending a perfectly manicured hand. I've heard so much about you. All boring, I'm sure, Madison replied automatically, falling back into her practiced role as decorative spouse. On the contrary, I hear you have an MBA from Stanford and significant experience in investment strategy. That's hardly boring. Madison felt a flutter of pleasure at being recognized for her actual qualifications. It had been so long since anyone had mentioned her education or experience. I used to work in finance, but that was before marriage. Before Tyler decided you were more valuable as an accessory than as an asset, Victoria said with knowing smile. Men like your husband often make that mistake. They think beautiful women can't also be brilliant. Over lunch, Victoria revealed that she was a strategic consultant for high net worth individuals, helping them diversify their investments and protect their assets. She'd worked with everyone from tech billionaires to European royalty. I've been watching your husband's company, Victoria continued. Data Vault Systems is impressive, but Tyler's making some questionable decisions lately, expanding too quickly, taking on risky partnerships. Madison's pulse quickened. What kind of risky partnerships? Fashion industry ventures. Very volatile market, especially when you're entering through personal relationships rather than solid business analysis. Madison felt ice forming in her stomach. Victoria knew about Savannah. I'd be happy to review your family's financial portfolio, Victoria offered. Purely as a friend, of course. Sometimes an outside perspective can identify vulnerabilities that insiders miss. Against every instinct screaming in her head, Madison agreed to meet Victoria at her office the following week. Something about the woman felt like salvation finally. Someone who saw Madison as more than Tyler's pregnant accessory. Victoria's office was in a discreet building near Wall Street, all mahogany and leather that whispered of old money and older secrets. She welcomed Madison with tea and sympathy, listening attentively as Madison carefully outlined her concerns about Tyler's recent behavior. Men having midlife crises often make terrible financial decisions, Victoria said with maternal concern. They start thinking with their egos instead of their brains. It sounds like Tyler might be headed for some serious mistakes. What would you recommend? Protection. We need to protect your interests and your baby's future. I can help you establish some financial independence, create safeguards. Tyler can't touch. Madison felt a surge of gratitude so powerful it brought tears to her eyes. Finally, someone was offering to help her fight back instead of just accepting Tyler's abandonment. But as Victoria outlined her strategy, something nagged at Madison's subconscious. The older woman seemed to know too much about Tyler's business dealings, too much about his travel schedule, too much about decisions that hadn't been made public. The realization hit Madison like a physical blow during their third meeting. When Victoria casually mentioned Tyler's new fashion industry contacts in Milan, Madison had never told Victoria that Tyler was in Milan. "How did you know Tyler was in Milan?" Madison asked carefully. Victoria paused for just a fraction of a second, long enough for Madison to see the calculation behind her sympathetic eyes. "Didn't you mention it? I must have read it in some business publication." But Madison knew Tyler's Milan trip wasn't public information. The only way Victoria could know about it was if someone had told her directly. That night, Madison did something she should have done weeks earlier. She hired a private investigator to research Victoria Sterling. The report arrived the next morning and destroyed Madison's world all over again. Victoria Sterling wasn't just a strategic consultant. She was Tyler's business partner in a shell company that had been quietly acquiring fashion industry assets for the past 6 months. She was also, according to financial records, the person funding Savannah Brooks's lifestyle brand launch. Madison stared at the documents spread across her dining room table, feeling betrayal so complete it was almost abstract. Tyler hadn't just been cheating on her with Savannah. He'd been using Victoria to manipulate Madison into exposing her own financial resources and business plans. Every conversation with Victoria had been reported back to Tyler. Every vulnerability Madison had shared had been weaponized against her. Even her newfound partnership with Marcus Klein was probably known to them. The baby kicked sharply, and Madison placed both hands protectively over her belly. Her daughter was going to be born into a world where her own father had tried to destroy her mother's attempt at independence. Madison's phone buzzed with a text from Victoria, "Looking forward to our meeting tomorrow. I have some exciting new strategies to share." Madison stared at the message, then slowly typed her response. "I'm not feeling well. Can we postpone?" But inside, Madison was feeling better than she had in months, because now she understood the real game being played, and she was about to change all the rules. The first catastrophe struck at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday. Madison woke to sharp pains in her abdomen and blood on her sheets. The terror was immediate and primal, not for herself, but for the daughter she'd been planning to protect. The emergency room at Mount Sinai was fluorescent bright and sterile cold. Madison lay on a gurney while doctors pressed ultrasound wands against her belly and spoke in the careful voices medical professionals used when things might be very wrong. "Mrs. Morrison, I need you to try to stay calm." "Doctor," Rodriguez said gently, "we're seeing some concerning signs, but the baby's heartbeat is strong." "Is she going to be okay?" Madison's voice came out as a whisper. "We're going to monitor you both very closely. High stress levels can cause complications in pregnancy, and your blood pressure is dangerously elevated." Madison closed her eyes, fighting panic. She'd been so focused on outmaneuvering Tyler that she'd forgotten her body was carrying precious cargo that couldn't survive corporate warfare. Her phone rang, Tyler's ringtone. "Madison, I just got your message. What's happening?" She could hear music in the background, laughter, the sound of people having a wonderful time. Tyler was at a party while she lay in a hospital bed afraid of losing their child. "I'm at the hospital. The baby, there's been some bleeding." Silence. Then, "Jesus, are you okay? Is the baby okay?" "I don't know yet." Should I come home, I can catch a red eye. But I'm in the middle of these crucial negotiations. Don't bother. Madison hung up before Tyler could finish explaining why closing a business deal was more important than his wife and unborn child. Dr. Rodriguez returned with test results that offered fragile hope. The bleeding had stopped, and the baby's vitals were stable. But Madison was now officially high risk and needed to eliminate stress from her life immediately. I'm going to prescribe bed rest for the next 2 weeks, Dr. Rodriguez said. And I strongly recommend you avoid any situations that might cause emotional distress. Madison almost laughed. Her entire life was emotional distress wearing a designer dress. The second catastrophe came disguised as good news. Marcus Klein called while Madison was still recovering at home, his voice buzzing with excitement. Madison, we have a problem. A wonderful problem. Vogue wants to feature 3 pieces from our collection in their September issue. They saw the prototypes at a private showing, and they're calling it the most important new voice in American fashion. Madison should have been thrilled. Instead, her blood turned to ice. How did Vogue see our prototypes? We haven't done any public showings. Marcus paused. Victoria Sterling arranged it. She said she wanted to help accelerate our timeline. Victoria Sterling, who was secretly working with Tyler, who had just exposed Madison's fashion investment to one of the most influential publications in the world. Marcus, we need to pull out of the Vogue feature immediately. What Madison? This is the opportunity of a lifetime. This kind of exposure could make us a global brand overnight. It could also destroy us. Trust me, we need to withdraw. But it was too late. By the time Madison called Vogue's fashion director, the magazine had already committed to featuring their collection and had sent photographers to Marcus's atelier. The September issue was going to print in 2 weeks. Madison would be exposed as a serious fashion investor just as Tyler returned from Milan. The third catastrophe arrived via FedEx the next morning: divorce papers. Tyler was filing for divorce on grounds of irreconcilable differences and financial irresponsibility. He was seeking sole custody of their unborn child, citing Madison's recent erratic behavior and poor decision-making. Attached to the divorce filing was a psychological evaluation request, asking the court to determine Madison's fitness as a mother based on concerning investment decisions and emotional instability. Madison sat in her pristine living room, surrounded by legal documents that dissected her life like a failed business merger. Tyler had turned their marriage into a hostile takeover, with their daughter as the primary asset to be acquired. Her phone rang. It was Savannah Brooks. "Hi, this is so weird, but I think we need to talk," Savannah said, her voice tight with anxiety. "Tyler told me some really disturbing things about you, and I'm starting to think maybe I've been lied to about some stuff." Madison closed her eyes. Even Tyler's mistress was calling to deliver bad news. "What did Tyler tell you?" "He said you're mentally unstable, and that you've been stalking me and trying to sabotage my business. But the thing is, that contract you had me sign doesn't make sense if you were trying to hurt me. It actually protects me from a lot of industry bullshit." Madison felt the last piece of Tyler's game clicking into place. He'd told Savannah that Madison was dangerous, probably to justify why he needed to take custody of their child. He was building a narrative where Madison was the villain in everyone's story. "Savannah, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Are you pregnant?" A long pause. "How did you—" "Yes, about 8 weeks. Tyler said he was going to leave you anyway, and that this just moved up the timeline." Madison hung up and walked to her bedroom window, looking out over Central Park where people were living normal lives with normal problems. Her husband was planning to take her child, destroy her business reputation, and start a new family with a woman young enough to be his daughter. But as Madison stood there, holding her belly where her daughter was still growing strong despite everything. She realized something important. Tyler had made one crucial mistake. He'd taught her exactly how ruthless she needed to become. Madison's transformation began in the basement of a converted warehouse in Queens, where Jake Chen had assembled the most underground fashion meeting in New York City's history. The space thrummed with creative energy designers, investors, models, and industry insiders who operated outside the traditional fashion establishment. "Welcome to the real fashion industry," Jake said, leading Madison through the crowd. "These are people who build empires while Anna Wintour is still deciding what to have for lunch." Madison wore one of Marcus Klein's pieces, a deceptively simple black coat that looked unremarkable until you noticed how it made her appear taller, more commanding, untouchable. At 7 months pregnant, she should have looked vulnerable. Instead, she looked like a force of nature wearing Kevlar. "The court hearing is next week," Marcus said, joining them at a table near the makeshift runway. "Tyler's lawyers are arguing that your fashion investments prove you're having some kind of breakdown." "Let them argue," Madison replied calmly. "By the time I'm done, Tyler's going to wish he'd never heard the word fashion." She'd spent the past month rebuilding her strategy from the ground up. No more playing defense, no more reacting to Tyler's moves. Madison was about to introduce him to a game he'd never seen before. "Tell me about the influencer fashion market," Madison said to a young woman named Ashley who ran a network of micro-influencers. "Specifically, tell me about the brands that fail." "Most of them fail because they're built on personality instead of product," Ashley explained. "Some influencer gets famous, launches a clothing line that's basically their name slapped on cheap manufacturers, then acts surprised when nobody buys it after the hype dies down." "What about the ones that succeed?" "The ones that succeed have real business strategy behind them. Quality products, sustainable manufacturing, authentic brand identity. But most influencers don't understand the difference between being famous and building a business." Madison smiled. "What if someone wanted to ensure that a particular influencer brand failed spectacularly?" Ashley raised an eyebrow. Hypothetically. "You'd attack the supply chain. Fashion is all about timing if you can't deliver on schedule. If your quality control fails, if your manufacturing costs spiral out of control, you're dead. Especially if you've built hype you can't sustain." Madison filed that information away and moved on to her next conversation with a man who specialized in fashion industry crisis management. "The key to destroying someone in fashion," he explained over expensive champagne, "is public failure. This industry forgives almost anything except looking incompetent. You can recover from scandals, bad reviews, even financial problems. But if you look like you don't know what you're doing, you're finished." By midnight, Madison had assembled a network of fashion industry insiders who understood exactly what she was building. Not just a clothing line, but a strategic weapon designed to demolish Tyler's expansion into her world. "There's one more thing," Jake said as the party wound down. "Tyler's been asking questions about you, through Victoria Sterling. They know you're up to something. They just don't know what." "Good," Madison said. "Let them wonder." The next morning, Madison implemented phase 1 of her real strategy. She called every major fashion publication and canceled Marcus Klein's upcoming features. Then she called the manufacturers producing Savannah Brooks's lifestyle brand and made them offers they couldn't refuse, exclusive contracts that would tie up their production capacity for the next 6 months. By noon, Savannah's launch timeline had imploded. The manufacturers couldn't deliver her products on schedule. The publicity she'd been counting on had evaporated, and her investors were starting to ask uncomfortable questions about her business plan. Madison's phone rang. It was Tyler, calling from Milan. "What the hell are you doing?" His voice was tight with controlled fury. "I'm investing in fashion, just like you suggested," Madison replied sweetly. "Building a diversified portfolio for our daughter's future. You're sabotaging Savannah's business out of spite. I'm making strategic investments based on market analysis. If Savannah's business can't compete in the current market, that's not really my problem." "Madison, stop this. You're making yourself look unstable, and that's not going to help you in court." Madison looked at her reflection in the penthouse windows, seeing a woman Tyler no longer recognized. "You know what's not going to help you in court, Tyler. Having to explain to a judge why you were using company resources to fund your mistress's business while your pregnant wife was in the hospital." Silence. "I have documentation of every transfer, every business meeting, every expense you've charged to DataVault that was actually related to Savannah's brand. I also have recordings of Victoria Sterling discussing strategy with you. Want to guess how that's going to look to your board of directors? You're bluffing." Madison pulled up the files on her laptop, hundreds of pages of financial records, emails, recorded phone calls, and business documents that painted a clear picture of Tyler using his company to launch his mistress's career. "Try me," she said, and hung up. 2 hours later, Savannah Brooks posted a tearful Instagram video announcing that her lifestyle brand launch was being postponed indefinitely due to supply chain issues. The comments section exploded with speculation about what had really happened. Madison didn't need to respond. She'd let the market speak for itself. The custody hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in downtown Manhattan. Madison arrived wearing Marcus Klein's masterpiece, a navy blue coat that looked conservative enough for court, but somehow made her appear like she could command armies. At 8.5 months pregnant, she moved with the careful grace of someone who had learned to weaponize underestimation. Tyler sat at the opposing table with his lawyer, Victoria Sterling beside him in a show of support that would have fooled Madison 6 months ago. He looked confident, polished, like a man who was used to winning. He had no idea he was about to lose everything. "Your Honor," Tyler's lawyer began, "my client is seeking sole custody because Mrs. Morrison has displayed increasingly erratic behavior, making risky financial decisions that demonstrate poor judgment and emotional instability." Judge Patricia Williams was a woman in her 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes that suggested she'd seen every variety of wealthy man trying to manipulate the legal system. Madison liked her immediately. "Can you be more specific about these financial decisions?" Judge Williams asked. "Mrs. Morrison has invested millions of dollars in fashion industry ventures without her husband's knowledge or consent. She's also engaged in what appears to be targeted harassment of a young woman in the influencer industry." Madison's lawyer, Marcus Washington, the best divorce attorney in New York, stood up with a stack of documents that looked thick enough to stop bullets. "Your Honor, we'd like to present evidence that Mr. Morrison's concerns about his wife's business investments are motivated not by financial prudence, but by the fact that Mrs. Morrison has discovered and documented his systematic embezzlement of company funds to finance his extramarital affair." The courtroom went very quiet. Marcus Washington projected Tyler's financial records onto a screen where everyone could see them. Every dinner at expensive restaurants, every hotel suite, every piece of jewelry bought for Savannah Brooks with DataVault Systems corporate credit cards. "Furthermore," Marcus continued, "Mrs. Morrison's fashion investments weren't reckless speculation. They were strategic moves designed to protect her family's assets from her husband's poor business decisions." Madison watched Tyler's face go pale as Marcus displayed a second set of documents, ones that showed DataVault Systems was hemorrhaging money on Tyler's fashion industry expansion plans. Mrs. Morrison discovered that her husband was planning to enter the fashion market through personal relationships rather than sound business analysis. Her own investments were designed to establish legitimate market position in case her husband's ventures failed. Judge Williams leaned forward. "Mrs. Morrison, do you have anything to add?" Madison stood carefully, her hand protective over her belly. When she spoke, her voice was clear and strong. "Your Honor, I spent 2 years being the perfect wife while my husband built his empire. I gave up my career, my independence, and my identity to support his success. When I discovered he was betraying our marriage and risking our family's financial security, I didn't fall apart. I got strategic." She gestured to the evidence Marcus Washington had presented. "Every investment I made was researched, calculated, and designed to protect our daughter's future. I didn't act out of emotion. I acted like the Stanford MBA and former Goldman Sachs strategist that my husband chose to forget I was—" Madison paused, meeting Tyler's eyes across the courtroom. "My husband made the mistake of thinking that because I was quiet, I was weak. Because I was supportive, I was stupid. Because I was pregnant, I was helpless. He's about to learn how expensive those assumptions can be." Judge Williams reviewed the documents for what felt like an hour. When she finally looked up, her expression was carefully neutral. "Mr. Morrison, I'm going to deny your request for sole custody. Furthermore, I'm ordering an immediate audit of Data Vault Systems' finances to determine if company funds were misappropriated for personal use." Tyler shot to his feet. "Your Honor, this is— Mr. Morrison, sit down. I'm not finished." Judge Williams turned to Madison. "Mrs. Morrison, the court recognizes your right to make independent financial decisions. However, given your pregnancy and the stress of these proceedings, I'm appointing a financial guardian to oversee major investments until after your child is born." Madison nodded. It wasn't complete victory, but it was enough. Tyler wouldn't get custody, and his business practices were now under legal scrutiny. But the real victory came as they left the courthouse. Tyler's phone was buzzing with calls from Data Vault's board of directors, who had just received copies of all the financial evidence presented in court. "Madison, we need to talk," Tyler said desperately. "This doesn't have to destroy everything we built." Madison looked at him, really looked at him for the first time in months. She saw a man who had mistaken her love for weakness, her support for submission, her pregnancy for vulnerability. "Tyler, there was never any we. There was you building an empire while I provided decoration. That's over now." A black car pulled up to the curb. Madison's driver held the door open as she carefully settled into the back seat. "Mrs. Morrison," the driver said. "Mr. Klein called. The Milan Fashion Week invitations arrived." Madison smiled as the car pulled away from the courthouse, leaving Tyler standing on the sidewalk with his phone still buzzing and his world falling apart. "Tell Mr. Klein we accept," she said. "It's time to show the fashion world what real power looks like." 3 months after giving birth to Elena Grace Morrison, named for the doctor who had saved both their lives, Madison stood in the wings of the Milan Fashion Week main stage, watching models showcase the collection that would change everything. The Hidden Power line was everything Marcus Klein had promised, clothing that looked elegant and understated until you understood its true purpose. These weren't just garments. They were armor for women who had learned to weaponize underestimation. Madison wore the collection's centerpiece, a deep burgundy coat that seemed simple until you noticed how it transformed her silhouette into something commanding, untouchable, dangerous. At her side, baby Elena slept peacefully in a carrier designed by Marcus to coordinate with the collection. "Are you ready?" Marcus asked, his eyes bright with the excitement of vindication. Madison looked out at the audience. Fashion editors, buyers, influencers, and industry power players filled every seat. In the front row, she spotted Savannah Brooks, whose attempt to rebuild her brand had failed spectacularly when all her new manufacturers had mysteriously become unavailable. But Madison wasn't looking at Savannah. She was looking at Tyler, who sat 3 rows back, his face a mask of barely controlled panic. Data Vault Systems had collapsed 2 weeks after the custody hearing. The board had fired Tyler when the financial audit revealed extensive misuse of company funds. His other business ventures had failed when investors learned about his legal troubles. The penthouse was in foreclosure, and Tyler was living in a studio apartment in Queens. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer's voice echoed through the venue. "Please welcome the creative director of Klein Morrison Industries, Madison Reynolds Morrison." Madison walked onto the runway, carrying her sleeping daughter, her coat flowing behind her like a cape. The audience rose in a standing ovation that felt like vindication made audible. At the microphone, Madison looked out over the crowd of people who represented the fashion industry's elite. When she spoke, her voice carried to every corner of the venue. 18 months ago, I was told I was just a pregnant housewife whose only value was in being quiet and supportive. Today, Klein Morrison Industries is valued at $200 million, and our waiting list includes everyone from Supreme Court justices to Hollywood leading ladies. She paused, her eyes finding Tyler in the crowd. I learned something important during those months when everyone thought I was broken. The most dangerous person in any room is the one whose strength you fail to recognize. The woman you dismiss as decoration might be the architect of your destruction. The applause was thunderous. Madison smiled and walked back down the runway, her daughter secure in her arms and her empire secure beneath her feet. After the show, Madison sat in her suite at the Four Seasons, fielding calls from business partners around the world. Klein Morrison had become more than a fashion brand. It was a symbol of female empowerment that resonated far beyond clothing. Elena gurgled happily in her arms as Madison reviewed the final documents that would complete her transformation from victim to victor. The first was a purchase agreement for Data Vault Systems' remaining assets, which Madison was acquiring through a consortium of female investors for 30 cents on the dollar. The second was a partnership agreement with 3 major retailers who wanted to carry Klein Morrison exclusively. The third was an eviction notice for Tyler's Queens apartment, which Madison owned through a shell company she'd established 6 months earlier. Her phone buzzed with a text from Tyler. "Can we please talk? I know I made mistakes, but Elena deserves to have her father in her life." Madison looked at her daughter, who had Tyler's eyes but Madison's determined chin. Elena would indeed have her father in her life, but on Madison's terms. She typed back, "You can see Elena every other weekend, supervised visits only. If you want more than that, you'll need to prove you understand that respect isn't negotiable." Then Madison deleted Tyler's number and added a new contact, Elena's future. She transferred another $10 million into the trust fund that would ensure her daughter never had to choose between independence and security. As the sun set over Milan, Madison stood on her balcony overlooking the city where fashion empires were built and destroyed daily. She'd entered this world as a broken woman seeking revenge and emerged as a force that would reshape how the industry thought about power. Elena stirred in her arms, and Madison whispered the words she wished someone had told her months earlier. "Never let anyone convince you that being underestimated is weakness, little one. Sometimes it's the greatest advantage you'll ever have." Below them, Milan glittered with the lights of ambition and possibility. Madison Morrison had learned to turn betrayal into empire, heartbreak into armor, and silence into the most powerful weapon of all. The billionaire who took his mistress to Fashion Week had lost everything to the pregnant wife he thought was powerless. Some lessons, Madison reflected, were worth 9 months of pain to teach. And that's how Madison Morrison proved that being underestimated isn't weakness, it's a weapon. She didn't just get revenge, She built a $200 million empire. If this story left you speechless, smash that like button and drop a comment. What would you have done in Madison's position? Hit subscribe and the notification bell for more stories where underdogs become queens and justice comes with designer clothing. Share this with someone who needs to remember that quiet strength is often the most dangerous kind. What story should we cover next? Let us know below. We love hearing from our incredible audience. Until next time, remember, never underestimate the person who stays silent. They might just be planning something legendary.